The pounding on the door shattered the silence of the night. It was 1 a.m., and the tiny house at the edge of the street stood bathed in pale moonlight, curtains fluttering in the cold breeze through a half-open window. Inside, Margaret jolted awake, clutching her thin blanket, heart racing. For a brief second, she thought it was just a dream, until the pounding came again, louder this time, followed by a voice shouting, "Police! Open up!" Confusion clouded her mind. Police. Here, she was a widow, living alone in a modest house with peeling wallpaper and creaking floors. She scrambled out of bed, fumbling for her robe, and shuffled toward the door, her breath quick and shallow. Through the small glass pane, she could see dark silhouettes, officers, flashlights cutting through the darkness, hands poised on holsters. Fear wrapped around her chest like a vice. Just a moment. She called out, unlocking the chain. The door flew open before she could fully turn the knob, and several uniformed officers rushed in, their boots thudding heavily against the wooden floor. "Ma'am, we have a warrant to search the premises," one barked, sweeping a flashlight across the small living room. Margaret stumbled back, clutching her robe. "Search? What for? I haven't done anything." Her voice trembled, a mix of fear and bewilderment. The officers fanned out, opening cupboards, checking corners, moving with mechanical precision. One of them flipped open a folder, muttering, "Tip about stolen property." "Matches the address." "Stolen property," Margaret repeated, tears welling in her eyes. "You've made a mistake. I live alone. I'm 73 years old." But they barely glanced at her, continuing their search. One officer moved toward the mantel, his flashlight catching the gleam of something metallic. He froze. "Sarge," he whispered, "you might want to see this." The others gathered as he lifted a dusty wooden case, setting it gently on the table. Inside, resting on faded velvet, lay rows of medals, some gold, some silver, each engraved with symbols of valor, sacrifice, and honor. There were photographs, too, a young man in uniform, eyes sharp and proud, Margaret beside him, smiling in her youth, newspaper clippings with bold headlines, General Thomas Whitaker awarded Medal of Honor. Silence fell. The sergeant, a broad man with graying hair, stared at the display, his expression shifting from suspicion to awe. This is General Whitaker?" he asked softly. Margaret nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He was my husband. He served 35 years. Gave his life for this country." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier aggression fading into shame. One lowered his flashlight, his voice quiet. "Ma'am, we're so sorry. We didn't know." Margaret clutched the locket around her neck, her hands trembling. "No one ever does," she whispered. "Not anymore." The room, moments ago filled with noise and intrusion, now stood still, the medals gleaming faintly, silent witnesses to a hero long gone but never forgotten. The silence stretched heavy in the small living room, broken only by the rhythmic tick of the old clock on the mantel. The sergeant took off his cap, holding it against his chest, and exchanged a solemn look with the others. The men, moments ago so sure of their purpose, now stood humbled, their eyes darting from the medals to the widow's tear-streaked face. One of them, the youngest officer, swallowed hard. "Ma'am, we didn't mean to frighten you. The call came through, and we thought." Margaret raised a trembling hand, stopping him. "You thought I was a thief." Her voice was calm, though weary, carrying decades of quiet endurance. "You thought a woman like me, old, alone, forgotten, could only be hiding something shameful." Her words weren't angry, just sad. The sergeant sighed deeply, stepping closer. "Sometimes," he admitted, "the job makes us see ghosts where there aren't any. We're sorry for barging in like that." She nodded faintly, her eyes drifting toward the medals, the memories swirling behind them like ghosts of a life once full of laughter and music. "Tom earned every one of those," she said softly. "He used to polish them every Sunday, said they reminded him of the boys who didn't come home." Her gaze grew distant. "We were supposed to grow old together, but after he passed, it's just been me and them." The youngest officer's jaw tightened. He was a hero," he said quietly. The sergeant straightened, his voice lower now, respectful. "General Whitaker. I've heard of him. He led the Falcon unit overseas. My father used to talk about that mission, said your husband saved dozens." Margaret's lips curved into a small, wistful smile. "He never bragged about it. Said the real heroes were the ones who didn't return." She took a slow breath. It's been years since anyone remembered his name. The officers shifted uneasily, guilt pressing on their shoulders. The sergeant finally spoke, We'll make this right. We'll file the report properly. You shouldn't have been disturbed. He paused, then added, if you don't mind, ma'am, we'd like to send someone to fix that broken latch on your door. Can't leave it like this. Her eyes softened, touched by the sudden warmth. Thank you, she murmured. The men began backing toward the door, their boots quieter now, their voices hushed. Before stepping out, the young officer looked back once more at the metals, then at her. You don't have to be alone, ma'am. There's still people who care. Margaret smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. I know, she said. Tonight, I was reminded. As the door closed behind them, the house fell quiet again, but it no longer felt empty. The metals shimmered softly in the moonlight, a silent promise that even in forgotten corners, honor never fades.